Hey guys, welcome back to another management vlog. On this week's vlog, I'm going to be talking about some things that you guys have been asking a lot about. We're going to be talking about hinge cutting, hack and spraying, and doing a timber stand improvement through logging, and if they really do work. I'm going to show you the truth on what I have found to work here on the hunting grounds, because I've been doing these three things over the last few years. I'm going to show you the results and take you to different spots in my property and just show you everything about it, so hopefully you guys can learn from my failures and my successes and implement them on your property. Now, whether you're hinge cutting or you're hack and spraying or you're doing a select cut, what you're trying to do is bring the food and the cover down to the ground level, to down there to where the wildlife can benefit from it. As you can see back behind me, this is an area that I've done two of those methods over the last few years. About a year and a half ago, I came in here and I did an edge feathering technique. So this is about 30 yards wide in here, and came in and did a pretty heavy select cut through this area. Came in and actually cut down the trees and sprayed the stumps to try to promote this growth. Now, a lot of these animals that we like to hunt love edges because of diversity in the ecosystem in there. There's just a lot of different varieties of species in there, from them to browse on, to take cover in, to nest in, to bed in. Everything really is concentrated in that edge. So instead of having a mature field that butts up directly into a hard timber edge where there's just no diversity in there, it's one ecosystem right into the other, there's no transition. We're creating that transition and the animals love it. It doesn't matter if it's deer, turkey, quail, rabbits, everything benefits from the edge. Now, what I did in here is I came in, like I said, and I cut these trees down and actually sprayed the stumps because I didn't want them regenerating. And that's one thing I definitely learned, is take your time and do it right the first time, so you don't have to go back into these areas and do anything else later on. So when you're in there and you're cutting these stumps, go ahead and go in there and spray them and kill them, because that root base is still there. It's still 100% alive. It's still got all that nutrition and energy and everything stored in it, and it's going to put that right into new growth. So it's still going to be competing with your native browse, which you want to generate in this area. You want this diversity to flourish, and it can't do that if that tree, essentially, even though it's not standing, is still in competition with everything around there. So go in and spray it, and that's what we did here. I came in, I cut these stumps, I sprayed them, and we got a lot of green up. Now, there were some of these larger trees in here, as you can see. Mainly it looks like the walnuts that I just didn't want laying down. They were a much larger tree. I didn't want them laying down the food plot. I felt like it was just kind of too cumbersome and too thick if I laid them down in here right now at this point, and I didn't want to do that. So this year I followed up, came in with a hack and spray method, and hack and sprayed these trees. So now they're just dead standing. So even the root base is dead. You've got a lot of vegetation growing around all the way up to the stumps around them. They aren't competing with anything. They aren't competing with the food plot. But it has drastically improved and changed this area. You can tell there's a lot of vegetation in here, a lot of browse, a lot of cover, and essentially we've created a transition zone right here before coming into the food plot. I'm going to give you an idea how thick this is. We got a lot of diversity in here. I mean, we've got young persimmons, we got a lot of other young saplings, even oaks. Saw some ragweed back there, a lot of young raspberries, even got some red buds. Got a lot of grasses and forbs in here, but it is not too hard to walk through, especially for deer. They have no problem walking through this whatsoever, but it creates a lot of cover. There's a lot of browse, and in some areas, as we get closer to the tree line here, it's getting pretty tall. So, but it transitions all the way back through here. It looks really, really good, which once was just mature timber that you could see all the way through, and now, just in a year's time, look at all this native vegetation that's come up. This is all down there in that seed bed. It's just kind of dormant because it's suppressed by the canopy of these mature timber in here. And so once you clear this out, you allow the sun to come down through, and you get that germination to start, you get this green up growth, and it just flourishes. But it does look really good, and I couldn't be more happy about this. But essentially, this is one of the most cost-effective ways to bring in food and cover onto your property. It's not planting a food plot, but to get in here and put the money into a tank of gas and oil for your chainsaw and get some herbicide and come in here and cut and spray, and essentially right there you've got pretty much a year-round food source. Even when all these go dormant during the winter, you still got a lot of this woody stem that the deer are going to come in and browse. So this pays off even more so than a food plot for your property. It should be one of the first things that you do to improve your property other than planting a food plot, in my opinion. So you got this big dead tree, and look right there. Just hack and spray, probably got one, hack and spray, leads to that. Now here's another really cool thing. You can be really selective when you're doing this edge feathering and just timber stand improvement, and really kind of turn the timber into what you want it to as far as species wise. Here I went ahead and left a little group of young persimmons right here on the edge of this tree line, and you can see they're already producing fruit. So right there, pretty cool that we're going to have not only fruit producing, but get a lot of green up all the way around it. Persimmons don't really compete too much when you just have a few of them like this. You can see it's just thick and green all the way up to them, but that's pretty cool. So here we are in a completely different spot on the property, on the south end of my property. This is on a north-facing hill slope, and I wanted to provide some bedding on this north-facing hill slope because we don't have a lot of them on this property, and I wanted somewhere for these deer to kind of go to and have an area to bed up in that was cooler during those warm summer months. So in this area, it was a lot of suppressed, younger hardwoods, and it did have a great canopy, and it really suppressed any growth from growing down below, but there's really no value hardly in the timber on this hillside, so logging wasn't an option in this area. I wasn't going to get any money from logging, or did they have any desire to want to log this whatsoever. So I came in, I combined two combinations of management here. I went through with the hack and spray, and I did some hinge cutting. I wanted some quick cover, and if you're looking for something, a management technique that's going to provide you quick cover, that's going to be hinge cutting. Now I've kind of led away from hinge cutting for the most part. I still do it. I think it's a great tool when you need it, but I find that more so I'm going back in and cleaning up a lot of my hinge cutting areas because I still find that it's competing with the native browse is what I don't want it to do, and that's been my battle that I've been running into. This area though, we are only right now from where I am standing about 50 yards away from my driveway, so I wanted some quick cover down low because I'm going to get in here and I'm going to hack and spray all these trees and not have any cover already down below. I need some instant cover. So I went through, I predominantly cut a lot of the dogwoods, some of the elms, sassafras, there's a few hickories here and there. I think if you're going to hinge cut, you need to be educated on the tree species so you can hinge cut the right trees. I decided to do a lot of these dogwoods because dogwoods, redbuds, elms, sassafras, deer really love them. They hit on them really quick, and I've found that the root base that those trees have don't really compete too much with the surrounding vegetation as much as like a red oak or a white oak or a post oak. With that, I came in and I knocked a lot of these down knowing that the deer are going to love these already. As soon as I knocked them down, instantly within that night they were in here browsing on everything. And then I came back, went through and hack sprayed, killed a lot of the standing hickories, a lot of the oaks, and I left a lot of the mature white oaks in this area. As long as I had enough adequate light coming through, they were safe. That way we still get that acorn crop coming in and we get a lot of green up. And you can tell the green up in this area is absolutely crazy. Last year we didn't burn this. This year we actually came through and burnt all the fuel that was on the ground below, and it even just kind of made it boom that much more. So last year was the first year that we just went through the whole year with the hinge cutting and with the hack spraying, and we saw a very nice green up. The following year came through here and we finished it up with a prescribed burn, and it really didn't affect those hinge cut trees too much. Some of the tops that were laid down, it kind of burnt some of those, but they still have all greened up. We have great cover from the driveway, and we got a lot of green up underneath, and then we still got these mature white oaks that are going to produce this fall, which is really exciting. So this is where a combination of some of those methods really work well together, and this is an area that I would use hinge cutting. I will tell you, I'm not against hinge cutting any of these methods that you're using, there is a time and a place for every single method out there, and some of them got really popular and people are just not fully educated. You need to fully educate yourself on the methods and the practices before you go out and implement them, or get with somebody or a biologist or somebody that knows what they're talking about and have them come out and give you some pointers. Because if you go out and you just hinge cut this whole area, you're going to be doing a lot more harm than good, and then you're going to come back through later on and clean up that mess. And that's one thing I've tried to learn from, is trying to get in there and do these practices right the first time, so the next year I don't have to go in there, I don't have to follow up with any hack sprays or get in there with the chainsaw and cut some of these stumps down and actually spray them. I can get in there, do it once and done, and then maybe the year or two after that follow through with the prescribed burn and just really give it that 1-2 punch and let it explode. Well, that was cool. I actually just drove down here to the very bottom. I want to talk about some logging, and actually just busted up a couple of deer that were bedded up. I'm going to freehand this one with the camera because it's truly really hard to show you the perspective of the amount of change that is here. But just look at the amount of vegetation that is in and around me here. So this is a ton. This has changed drastically. Beforehand, you come in here 2 years ago, you would have been able to see all the way up this hillside, no problem. Very little vegetation or anything down low, just a lot of really, really mature trees. And now I can't see, you know, 30 yards at max in some of these areas, and it's looking really good. One of the major benefits of having them come in here and do this logging for me was getting them to build in access to all these areas of my property that beforehand I had no roads or anything. So with them getting in here, I was able to sit down with them beforehand and say, all right, if you're going to log this hillside and this hillside, let's make a road going down here and here. And then at the end, they had promised to come in and clean it up just like they did. And now I have roads down to all these points at the very bottoms, because we know if we're going to shoot a deer on our property at the top, they're going to run down the big hollers, and we're going to have our work cut out for us. So at least now we can drive an ATV down here, load up the deer and haul it out. This area back behind me looks pretty good. You can see there's a lot of still really nice mature white oaks all up and down this hillside. This is one of those things that, once again, it goes back to making sure you're educated, or getting somebody that's educated out in your property before you do so. If you don't know what you're doing logging wise, don't just hire anybody out. Do your homework, research the loggers in your area, get everybody's input on how they have had to deal with them and whatnot. But really put your research into the loggers, and then get somebody out here who can tell you what you need to do on your property. I did a very select cut in certain areas of my property. I did not want my entire property logged. I didn't want them to just come in here and take all the high value and leave me with all the crap trees, because that can ruin your property, and it can take probably almost generations before you get your property back to where it really needs to be. Now, the way that I've done it on mine, with doing these select cuts and only in certain areas, I can come in here at least every 10 or 15 years and do this exact same thing over and over, and just hit different areas and have that income coming back every 10 or 15 years, or even less if I really wanted to, because I didn't do that heavy of a cut. Now, the areas that I did cut were areas that I just really couldn't hunt. A lot of these hill slopes and these bottoms where it was just, the wind was already too swirly and there was a lot of value in the timber down there, I couldn't hunt it. And so why not improve it for the wildlife, create those sanctuary areas all along the edge of my property where it's going to hold the deer closer to the food plots and everything else to get them in there quicker and have a lot more action during my hunts. So that's exactly what we did. We actually set like a diameter of tree that it had to be at least before they took it out. And like I said, we only did certain select areas of my property. And it's really helped to hold the bucks. I will tell you that. Beforehand, it was so open in here, it seemed like the bucks didn't have any security. They were always in competition. They could always see other deer. A big buck likes to have his own little zone, and the thicker it is, the harder it is to see other deer and other bucks, and for them to kind of feel nice and safe. So what I've done is, on this property, where they log, there's certain areas throughout this property, and it's kind of like buck hidey holes where it's little thick areas and there's another little thick area, so this buck can kind of be the domain of this sanctuary area. Now down 2 hills over, there's another sanctuary area that a buck can have, and he can be the king of that sanctuary area, and so it kind of spreads out the bucks. Also makes it where I can hold more bucks in my property because they just aren't pressured as much. But the amount of cover that this produces is insane. Even if you go through and you do a cut that's not really great for your property, you're going to get a lot of thick undergrowth and you're going to get a lot of that vegetation at the deer's level, which is great. But doing it like this, you can see right here, look at the amount of browse that's on all these polk. They have eaten every little bit of that. There is bedding all up and down these hillsides. I've got the food plot right up there on the top of Rebel Hill. I've got the Savannah project that I'm working on right now, and I'm basically just holding these deer right here on this hillside within a few hundred yards of their destination plots right up top. Now a lot of people are going to think logging is ugly. It doesn't look great even when you do a select cut right after you log, but by doing a select cut you're not completely decimating the area. As you can tell, it looks really, really pretty in here. By coming back through and following up with some prescribed burns in the following years, it looks really great and it cleans up really fast. Now, if I were to come in and do a full-on clear cut, sure, it's going to take a long time before it ever once again looks appealing to the eye, but what's appealing to our eyes often a lot of times is not appealing to the wildlife side. So we got to keep that in mind, because what we like it to be clean and cut and just beautiful looking means that there's no browse and no cover for deer, so or turkeys or anything else for that sort. So you got to keep those little facts in mind when you're doing some logging, but I couldn't be more impressed on how it's turned out. Now if you're really smart about your logging and you're really tight on money like myself, and you don't have all that money to put into the management projects on your property like you would like, by doing this it can give you some more income. Now by doing the select cut, it allowed me to pay for the pond to be built, and we cleared the candy shop food plot, which is a 2-acre food plot that was nothing but timber beforehand, and in no way would I've had the money up front to get those two things done. But by taking the money from the logging, putting it right back into the land, it made me and the deer some happy campers. Well, it is some kind of hot today. It's like in the 90s with heat index, I'm sure, way over 100. But guys, that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. If you guys would, comment down below if you had any positive or negative experiences with any of these management techniques or any of the other ones that you may use on your property. And if you want to see any other vlogs specifically before we get into deer season, be sure to comment down below so we can knock those out. Make sure you guys give a thumbs up, and make sure you guys subscribe, because we do have a lot of vlogs that we're going to continue to knock out up to deer season. You're going to miss out if you guys have not subscribed. But guys, until next time, have a better than average day.